Hello, Rob here, and in this video I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction to the film Mustang. Now, this is for Component 2, Section A, so this is your second exam paper, and this is the global film option. You'll be studying two films, Mustang and another film called Taxi Tehran. Mustang is one of the films that's available on Mubi, so I'd like you to try and watch it over the summer and write me an essay on it. Right, so this is what's going to happen in Section A global film. Okay, so the key things we have to look at are the key elements of film form. So this means film language. So as you're watching the film, I would like you to make notes about the cinematography, mise en scène, editing, and sound, and how all of these things create meaning for the audience. Which comes in the second point, meaning and response. What do you think this film means, and how have you responded to it? Which characters do you identify with or align with? What morals or messages are in this film? What's the political background behind it all? What's the next one, which is the context of the film. So, what's the production context? What's the political context? What's the religious and social context behind it all? Okay. In particular, this is a coming-of-age film about a group of young women. So consider your feminist theory as well. You could be considering Laura Mulvey's male gaze, theories of people like Lisbeth Van Zoenen, and you could be considering, in particular, Bell Hooks, because she, of course, talks about things like intersectionality, which is a Kimberly Crenshaw theory. And also you could be considering the sort of like post-colonial theories of Paul Gilroy, and with that the Edward Said theories about post-colonialism, okay, and the other, and the way in which Orientalism, stuff like that. So those are the things we need to be considering, right? Now, I apologise if I butcher these people's names, but I don't speak Turkish, so. This is Mustang. It was made in 2015 by Deniz Gamez Ergüven. It's an international co-production. So it's co-produced by France, Germany, Qatar and Turkey. And it was distributed by Artificial Eye. It is in Turkish. This film is a superb movie. I mean, it's stunning. Okay, it's moving. It's sad. It's beautiful. It's all sorts of different things. It brings up all sorts of questions and debates. It was, nominated for, and it won a number of awards. So at the Cannes Film Festival, it won the Europa Cinemas Label Award. And in the Césars, which are like the French Oscars, or like our BAFTAs, it won Best First Feature Film, Best Original Screenplay, Best Editing, and Best Original Music. So showered by compliments and awards. This is the director, Deniz Gamez Ergüven. So we've also got the idea that, this is a film that was directed by a woman. Which is still, sadly, not a very common situation, especially if we're looking at a Muslim country like Turkey. It also got nominated for the Oscars, so it was nominated in the Best Foreign Language Film category at the Academy Awards. So this film premiered at the Director's Fortnight section at the 2015 Cannes Film Festival. It won the Europa Cinemas Label Award. It was selected as France's submission and was nominated for the Best Foreign Language Film at the 88th Academy Awards. It was nominated for a Gold Globe Award for Best Foreign Language Film, and it received 9 nominations at the 41st César Awards. It won 4 of them, as we already said. In this picture here, we've got Alice Winkor and Deniz Gamez Ergüven following the original Screenplay César Award for Mustang. So back in 2016. Right. This is the cast and character names. I am not going to make any attempt whatsoever to pronounce those. No good can come of that. But you are going to need to write those down. So pause the video, make a note of them. Personally, I find it quite difficult during the film to actually tell the difference between some of these girls. They have a tendency to look alike, but maybe that's just me. Now, these are some of the other characters. So you've got the grandmother and you've got Errol. So that's the girl's grandfather, I think, maybe the father, I'm not sure. This is the guy they make friends with. Right, so make sure you've made a note of all the names, right? Now we've got to consider the context. So let's consider gender issues in Turkey. Now, Turkey is an EU country, so it's part of the European Union. But, as I said, Turkey is a country that borders Europe and Asia. Okay, so in particular, Istanbul, the capital of Turkey, is a city that is on that border. So it's always been going back to the history of the Holy Roman Empire, it was this borderland between Christianity and Islam, right? Back when it used to be Constantinople. But, Turkey is a Islamic country, and traditionally it is in theory, democratic country. But it has some issues. So if we consider gender, for example, according to the Gender Gap Index of 2015, which is done by the World Economic Forum, Turkey is 130th out of 145 countries. In other words, Turkey, which is the 17th biggest economy in the world, is the 15th last country in terms of gender equality. So Turkey has some major issues with gender equality. 40% of Turkish women are exposed to physical and sexual violence at least once in their lifetime, as stated in domestic violence research and of the World Economic Forum. And in 2015, 284 women were killed by their husbands or immediate partners. So, despite being an EU country, it has got some major issues about gender. Right, now this is a coming of age film about young girls. They start off in a situation where they have a pretty liberal, semi-westernized upbringing, but then they are clamped down upon in a very regressive way, in a very religious way. We can see elements of misogyny in this in particular. Now, there is a religious element to this as well. You might read this film as being specifically anti-theist. Theism is, theocracy is a society run by the church. Theism is about religion. Okay, so you could say this film is, in its message, anti-theist. It may not be literally anti-religion, but it certainly discusses the ways in which religion, specifically Islam in this, but this is not something that's restricted purely to Islam, but there are elements that to a Western liberal democratic viewpoint would be seen as being misogynistic. Okay, so it's definitely talking about the misogyny that is inherent in many religions, specifically Islam in this case. What about the political situation? Well, according to Freedom House, and this was from the Freedom in the World Report 2020, basically, Turkey is 32nd out of 100 in terms of, sorry, I lie, it is 32% free. I apologize for that, it's 32% free. This means it's classified as not free. It is a totalitarian dictatorship. To put this in perspective, Britain is way higher up. Okay, Britain is the 20th freest country in the world. America, by the way, has slipped down to 33. I think Britain is something like 90% free. Right. The main reason for this is Turkey has slipped down the rankings quite significantly in recent years. This is due to the rule of President Erdogan, who's the president of Turkey, and his Justice and Development Party, the AKP, has been ruling Turkey since 2002, and according to the Freedom House report, has been showing growing contempt for political rights and civil liberties. Its authoritarian nature was fully consolidated following a 2016 coup, where the military overthrew the government. Constitutional changes adopted in 2017 concentrated power in the hands of the president. So Turkey's becoming less and less free in the last, 18 years. It has been very much clamping down on civil liberties, especially things like freedom of the press. It's also been becoming more theocratic. Not in the same way as somewhere like Iran would be, which is, the other films we're looking at will be Taxi Tehran. Iran is very much a theocratic state. It is run by the church, right? By the clergy. Now, Turkey has also got an issue with ethnic conflict. So Turkey, I think, is still currently at war with Kurds in Syria. So the Kurds are a minority that is spread across the Middle East. I mean, certainly into Turkey, Syria, Iraq as well. They are sort of like a stateless people. And they've been fighting for their own state. Now, because of the complications of the war on terror, the Kurds have got a sort of like an army called the PKK. They are fighting against Islamic State, Daesh. They fought against Saddam Hussein, they fought against Al-Qaeda. They are very left-wing, almost communist. But they are, a much more sort of like democratic, free, almost westernized, I guess, kind of Middle Eastern people. The thing is, the PKK have been designated by Turkey and therefore NATO as a terrorist organisation. So there's a lot of complicated loyalties going on there. But either way, Turkey has been basically trying to ethnically cleanse the Kurds for a long time, as indeed people like Saddam Hussein did. He used chemical weapons against the Kurds back in the 80s, I think it was. Maybe the 90s, I can't remember. Using mustard gas and sarin against villages. Anyway, Turkey's been at war with Kurds pretty much quite unsuccessfully, quite frankly, for a while. So this is the political background about Turkey. So this is a country that's becoming less and less free. It is becoming more and more theocratic. It is becoming less and less liberal. Right? You could read the plight of the young girls in the film as a metaphor for Turkey's descent into totalitarianism. Above and beyond its, basic, feminist messages. So, things to bear in mind when you're watching this film, right? Ideological things. Make a note of these, write them down, make notes on them when you're watching the film. So pause these and write them down, right? But the things you need to look at are how does the film represent Turkey, especially politically and theocratically? So what is this film saying about the theocratic state, about religion? Right? This is a film about things like Islamic traditions. It's about arranged marriages. It's about patriarchal oppression of women. It's about feminism. Secondly, how does the film represent gender, age, nationality, and social class? Thirdly, I want to identify any binary opposites there are in the narrative and bring that into context with the contextual issues in modern Turkey. Then I want you to think about the spectator things. So what did you think of the film? Did you like it? Right? If you did like it, you explain why you liked it. If you didn't like it, you need to explain why you didn't like it. Right? You can't just say I didn't like it or I liked it. Tell me why. What specifically about it did you like or not like? What parts of the film provided you with an emotional response? How did it make you feel? Right? So not just what were you feeling, but how did it make you feel that? Don't forget you need to be considering the mise en scène, the cinematography, the editing and the sound, and how these things have manipulated you. Do you have a favourite character? Explain what it was about that character you liked. Are there any characters you don't like? Why didn't you like them? And then think about how, who you were meant to identify with, who you were meant to align with, and all this kind of stuff, right? What was your favourite part of the film? Why did you like it? Any parts of the film you didn't like? Explain why you didn't like them. And finally, think about how it compares to the kinds of films you've seen before. Have you ever seen a film like this before? On the subject of which, if you can get hold of it, and I don't think it's on Netflix or Amazon Prime, but there's a superb Sofia Coppola film called The Virgin Suicides, which stars Kirsten Dunst, which is quite similar to Mustang, both in terms of its story. It's also about a bunch of young girls who are oppressed by their religious parents and locked away from the world. It has a very similar atmosphere and aesthetic, a very similar sense of melancholia. It's also got an excellent soundtrack by the French band Air. So these are the things I want you to consider, right? Watch the film, make notes, watch the other videos in this playlist, have a crack at the question. If you've got any questions for me, drop me an email. Hope you enjoy the movie.